Welcome, gentlemen, to Aperture Science. Astronauts, war heroes, Olympians, you're here because we want the best. And you are it. So, who is ready to make some science?
Hi, I am not Cave Johnson, but welcome to my tutorial on how to generate real-time deepfakes from a single avatar portrait and use them in video conferences so you can make your friends and colleagues hate you. So, how do we get this result? Unfortunately, there's no single app we can just download and run and have that work for us. Instead, we're going to have to do a little bit of legwork and actually download and install things ourselves. I've put this guide together mainly for Windows users, but if you're following along on Mac or Linux, that'll be fine. You should still have access to the Mac and Linux scripts, which I'll point out as we go along, just to install and run things when necessary. Now, the important thing is that ideally you want to have an NVIDIA GPU. The more powerful, the better. I'm running a 1080 Ti, and it gives me about 30 frames per second, so you can adjust your expectations accordingly. However, you can still run this if you don't have an NVIDIA GPU. You'll be using the CPU renderer. It'll be a lot slower. It'll be about 1 frame per second, but again, you can still follow along if you want to. So to start off with, the first thing we'll want to do, if you have an NVIDIA GPU, is grab the CUDA toolkit. That's called CUDA toolkit. So what this is this is a software package from NVIDIA, which effectively just contains the libraries that are used by your GPU to actually run neural networks at runtime. You go to the page, hit download now, and then you go through this, pick your operating system, pick version 10, install the type of your preference, download that, run through the installer, and you should be set to go. Again, you only need this if you're actually running on an NVIDIA card. Otherwise, for the CPU renderer, I don't think you do need this. So next, what we want to do is grab a Python distribution. If you're not very technical, Python is just a scripting language, and it is what most neural network code uses these days. We're going to get Miniconda, which is a very lightweight and self-contained Python distribution. If you are technical and you use Python, the nice thing about this is it will create its own self-contained Python environment, so it's not going to affect anything else that you're doing in your system. It's not going to modify your system path. We want to get Python 3.7 for Windows 64-bit. Again, if you're on Mac OS or on Linux, there's other versions available there as well. We're going to grab this installer, and I'll just run quickly through the installation procedure. Go through, agree to everything. I'm actually going to create my own deepfake tutorial folder, and I'll just do a Conda folder in there, and everything I'm doing is just going to be in this folder. Don't agree to any of the advanced options, and then just hit install. So now that we have the main prerequisites for running this code, what we now actually want to do is download the code itself. Now, for this, I've actually created a repository on GitHub, which contains all of the files that need to run this and has the installation instructions. And this link should be available in the video description. Now, to download this, we could just go and do a download zip here on the website, but it's actually going to be a little bit easier to do this using the Conda environment that we've just installed. So instead, what we want to do is open the start menu and type in Miniconda. And this is going to open a command prompt, which is running within the Miniconda Python environment. What you'll want to do is navigate to the folder where you're doing this. So in my case, it's on the E drive, so I want to change to that. And then cd, change directory, deepfake tutorial. And then we can type in dir to see what's in this folder. and we can see that's a Conda installation. And from here, we now have actually access to a git command, which will allow us to download things from GitHub. So what you want to do is type in git clone and type in the URL. F9, that's me, Avatarify Windows, and this will automatically fetch all the contents of that folder. And it's, as you can see, it's a very small download. There's not much going on there. So now if I type in dir again, you can see I have an Avatarify Windows folder. And cd into that. And now you're ready to do more stuff. And if we go back to my file explorer, I can go to DeepFake tutorial and I can see that, yeah, I've got all the stuff, the same stuff as I had on my GitHub page. Now, there is one thing we can't get from GitHub. If we go back to the actual GitHub page, this is all code, and it's all quite lightweight. However, to run a neural network, we also need to have the model, which is, effectively, it's the bit that does the magic hard work part. And that's a big chunk of weights of all the neurons in the neural network. That's actually 700 megabytes, so we want to download that separately. Normally you download it from the researcher's Google Drive, but Google Drive has download limits. So if you can't access the Google Drive path, I've also uploaded it to Mega, which should hopefully run a little bit better. So you want to just grab that off of Mega, wait for that to transfer over, and I'm going to skip ahead. And boom! It is completed the download. So it will actually appear in your browser after it's downloaded on the website. And then all you want to do is grab this file and you want to put it in your root folder. So as we saw earlier, we have this DeepFake tutorial folder. And if we go into our repository, from your download folder, you just want to move this file voxatvcpk.pth.tar just into the root of your Avatarify Windows. And that is everything you need for now. So now let's go back to our Miniconda environment. Want to make sure that you are in the Avatarify folder. So for me, that's in E drive, change directory, DeepFake tutorial, and change directory Avatarify Windows. And there's actually still a few things to download, but we have scripts to take care of those. So first of all, we want to run install.bat. And this will grab you all of the things that you need. It'll download all of the things, resolve all the dependencies. It will occasionally ask you yes or no if you want to proceed, so you'll probably want to keep an eye on it and just hit the Y key every now and then like this. But in principle, it should all go well, and you should automatically get all of the prerequisite things like PyTorch that you actually need to run the neural network within the Python script. So I'm going to skip ahead now. And that's all of it done. So this took me about, I think, 5 minutes. So now we can test and see if this is going to work just by using the run.bat command. So the first thing it'll ask you is which webcam ID you want to use. typically this will be 0. I mean, typically you should only have one webcam, so that will be the first index, which is index 0. If you have other software installed, if you have anything using your webcam already at the moment, something I ran into is I had Snapcam running. That will cause errors to pop up and I won't be able to access it. And if you have like other webcams, multiple webcams connected or whatnot, you might want to try this a couple of times just to find what's the webcam you actually want to use. But then after that, if that's gone okay, you'll see it loading the example avatars that have been provided in the avatars folder, which is good. And once it gets to this point, it's initializing the DeepFake engine. So again, a little bit of a wait as it loads up, but I can hear my GPU starting to creak, which again is a good sign. And here we go. So I now have two windows come up. One of them is myself, hello, and the other one is an incredibly deformed looking Einstein. So it's working, great stuff. Now let's make this guy look a little bit less horrible. So I've resized these two windows so you can see them a little bit better, and you can see the console command output here on the left. So now to work with this, there's some controls, they're all keyboard controls that you can use to actually play around with this and get better results. So the first thing you'll probably want to do is you can use the W and S keys. If you click on one of these windows first, that helps. The W and S keys, that will zoom you in and out, and you generally want to keep your face, I guess, somewhere like about like this in the center of the image. Bear in mind both these images should be square as well, so I've resized them, but the way the model works is it's using 256 by 256 resolution. So the input and output should always be square. So this is actually cropping your webcam output from whatever is its maximum field of vision. But if the resolution looks low, that's because it is. So something like this is good. And then what you want to do is hit X. And what X does is it resets the reference pose of your face. Because what it does is effectively, whenever it's animating from a specific reference pose, where it's taking your face and the avatar you're trying to animate, and it's saying like, okay, that's the resting position, and it's then animating relative to that resting position. And one of the things that I found is that the best results you'll get is by trying to find what is the best resting position. So as you'll see in a bit, I've added some tools which try to help you find the best resting position for any given avatar. But in a pinch, just kind of a straight face looking forward, centered like this, is a good start for most avatars. Likewise, the best avatars are usually the ones that are also facing straight at the camera, because I think that's most similar like what the training data had. So now that we're doing this, we have a folder of avatars that came with our deepfake tutorial. That is here. So we have, this is the stuff we downloaded, the GitHub repository. So here we have an avatars folder, and it has a few pictures. And effectively you can add your own, as many as you like, whatever you want. The one limitation is that they should ideally be well, they need to be square, and they should be cropped kind of also like this around the face, like these guys. Now that they're here, you can use the number keys to scroll between the different avatars. As you can see, this default face pose works relatively well on them. The other thing that helps is lighting. And you can also use the A and D keys to scroll all the way through them, which helps if you have more than 10 images that you want to use as reference. So that's the very basics of it. And if you've gotten this far, congratulations. Now, if you want to dive a little bit deeper into it, there are some additional controls here. First of all, R will flip your input, which is very good if you're trying to match up to a facial expression. It's easier to do that while you're being mirrored. And T will flip the output, which is good if you're using some video conferencing software that automatically mirrors your camera output, or for whatever reason. Then, so the first way I tried to do this, if I wanted to match up my reference pose to the portrait, is if you press Z and C will actually blend in the reference of that portrait, so you can try and match up your face, and this is where the mirroring works really well. So if you can match up your face as close as possible to the orientation of that person's face, like this, and then you hit C. Now this is the reference pose, and everything else I'm doing is relative to that. And this can sometimes give better results. But I found that this doesn't always give the best results. So the original research paper on which this is based had a method for when it is converting video, it would actually search through the video and find what's the best frame as reference. And you can do that here as well, and this is something that I implemented into this code. If you press F, this will start to run a lot slower, but effectively what it's doing is on every frame it is analyzing your facial position, and it's trying to find one that matches the target avatar as closely as possible. And these numbers here, they represent the difference, how large is the difference between your current facial position and the facial position of the avatar. So every time you find a facial position that is lower than the one it's got stored, the screen will flash green and this number should decrease. Typically anything like around 10 or below tends to work really well. So if we hit F, we will switch that off. That works okay. So that can be a nice way of trying to find and iterate on this stuff. If you've got an image that's not working particularly well, this will help you find a good reference position. This tends to be especially useful if you're dealing with images where the person is turned sideways and they're not face on, because that can make a big difference. Well, next up, let's try and add an avatar of our own. So here I've downloaded a picture of old Mr. Tequila Face from Disco Elysium, and if we open him in the Photos app, you can see it's a nice high-res photo. The photos really don't have to be particularly good, since, as I mentioned before, we're only really using 256 by 256 resolution. The main thing that we want to do is go to the crop tool and pick out square crop just around the face like this, and just hit save on that, and this will update our photo here. And then what you want to do is, when you've got the Avatarify window selected, if you press Q, That will exit it, and now you just want to run it again, and it will, as it loads up, it will reload all the avatars, and now it's got Mr. Tequila Face in there. So I'm going to skip forward through to this loading again. There's Mr. Einstein, and now I can switch, and that's Mr. Tequila Face. Again, with this one, I can hit F and start searching for a better reference pose. As you can see, since he's facing sideways, our numbers here are quite high. So I'm going to flip my input camera, and I'm going to try and match him a little bit better. This is quite difficult to do out of the corner of my eye. There we go. I can flip myself back again, and we're in sync. So that went from a difference of about 200 to a difference of 15. So now you can see he's actually quite well animated, and you can pretty much look straight forward at the camera, and boy does that look weird. But it works out okay. And it's interesting that this seems to work better with paintings. Maybe because the brushstroke can just hide all the weird distortions and things a little bit better. Terrifying. So that's the basics of that. Next up, let's go through how we can actually stream this to webcam. So there's probably other solutions for this. The way I found easiest to do it is to use OBS, which is actually what I'm using to record this. So it's going to be fun trying to show how to use the recording software at the same time as I'm recording. OBS is the Open Broadcaster software. It effectively lets you record your desktop and stream things. You'll want to get the Windows version or whatever else you've got. Download that, install it. It's pretty straightforward to set up and run. The other thing that you want, however, is you want the OBS virtual camera, and this will actually allow it to not just stream to Twitch or YouTube, but it actually allows it to output to a virtual webcam on your machine. So if you do a search for that, you'll get to OBS virtual webcam. That's actually on GitHub. We don't want to actually download the code and build it. Instead, we can simply go to the Releases tab and get the installer for the latest release. And if we go through this installer, it's going to ask you a bunch of things. And I recommend here selecting to install the plugin and register only one virtual camera. After it does this, so you've installed OBS and then you install the virtual camera, I found that Windows doesn't always register the OBS camera as existing, so you'll probably want to restart after you've done this. Once you have done all of this, you should in principle, for example, if you open up Discord and you go to your video settings, same for Skype or for Zoom, you should now see an OBS camera. And if you hit test, you'll just get a completely grey output because we're not streaming anything into that camera. But that camera is there, which is good. So how do we put something on here? Well, let's load up OBS. So in this case, I have already created a scene which I'm capturing. And I've effectively gone, you add a scene and you add a source, and there's a bunch of sources you can select. And in this case, the source that I want to do is display capture because I'm capturing my desktop. Like I said, it's going to be fun trying to do this at the same time as I'm recording, but I think it's doable. In principle, what you should be able to do now is if you go to Tools here, you should be able to select Virtual Cam. Select the buffer frames to 0, keep aspect ratio. This one has gone small. If you hit Start, now if you go to Discord, you'll see that what this is outputting is now actually my webcam feed. And this is, yeah, I mean, you'd have the same result if you just shared your desktop, but this is now my desktop coming through as a webcam feed. Cool. I'll stop doing this for now. So the next thing we want to do is we want to load up Avatarify again. And as usual, I'm going to skip through it booting up. Okay, so now I've got these guys up here. That's all running at the same time. What we want to do is add a new source, and this is going to be a window capture. It's going to be a new window capture, make source visible, and you want to go and find out of everything else that's happening, you want to find the Avatarify window. That's this one here. And there it is. You probably don't want to capture the cursor. So now you have that as an extra source that you can move around within this window. And I appreciate this is going to be very confusing to look at. Yeah, yeah, just try to follow the mouse cursor, the biggest mouse cursor you can see, I suppose. So this guy, you can resize him. There's going to be some garbage around the edges, so if you hold Alt on your keyboard and you drag on these things, you can actually crop the image to get a square image. And there's going to be a little bit of border around the edges. Just crop those. So now you have a nice big square output. And in principle, if I go through, I can hide, nope, not my window capture. I can hide my display capture, and now all I have is this guy. If I bring this back in, you can see what I'm doing. So what I would then do is just resize this so it fills up the screen, and then I'd move it to the middle, and then hide the display capture, and now I have a full screen